Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this episode of One on One. My guest tonight, you've seen him many times on HTV. You've seen him many times during emergency situations here in the area. Well, it's time we go a little bit behind the scenes and talk with Earl Eues. He's been such a big part of our community. He serves on a lot of boards here in the area, so we decided to get him on One on One. It's all next. One on One is brought to you by the law office of Waits and Downer. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. And welcome back to this episode of One on One. I'm Martin False. Very pleased to have with us today Mr. Earl Eues, who heads up our emergency preparedness office, and he does a great job. And Earl, good to see you.
Good to see you, Martin, and thank you for the accolades for the office. We have a lot of good help, and as you know, the parish has great employees, so it helps out a lot. So
you really started from scratch with that office. Of course, you were in similar roles, and you had your own company, and you were doing similar things, so you were a good fit. But when I say that you learned a lot of things while being in the position, we've come a long way, and you're right in Hurricane Alley, so you better learn fast, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I had some great mentors. Morris Duplantis, Goose Duplantis, who worked for the Sheriff's Office for many years.
Yeah.
He was the Emergency Preparedness Director when that program was under the Sheriff's Office. When I started working for the parish in 1991, he took me under the wings and kind of showed me what was going on, how that operation worked. And then, of course, Al Leveron was part of that also. Mm-hmm. And so between Al and Goose, they pretty much taught me everything I needed to know to continue to move on and improve what we have today.
It's funny you would say that, because in 1985, when Juan was impending, I went to talk with Dean Daignault, who was the Civil Defense Director, and he had an old map with pins where you track the hurricanes, not like it is today, and he walked me through it. So we've had a long history of people in that position. You're a little more sophisticated with equipment now.
I got to meet Mr. Dean when we dedicated our new Emergency Operations Center out in Gray. We invited Mr. Dean to come and be part of that celebration. And it was great talking to him and listening to some of the stories that he had with the little bit of equipment that he had to take care of what needed to be done here in Terrebonne Parish.
And of course, it's named after our district attorney's father,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Joe Waits, who was a character, just a good guy.
And we're glad to have his name on our building, and we know what he's done for our community, and it's great to know that when I go to work every day, there's somebody on that building that's done a lot for us in our community.
Yeah, you ought to have Miss Nellie's name right next to it, yeah. Let me ask you this, so take me way back. I know I met you somewhere around the St. Francis chicken barbecues when Eugene False was twisting those chickens to make sure that the bones just fell off. I think that's the first time I recall meeting you. Am I right?
Probably so. I moved into town in 1991, and then my children went to St. Francis. But before even my children went to St. Francis, Manuel Merlos recruited me to go help with the chicken barbecue. So I went over there. I mean, it's such a great time, and it's lots of fellowship. And they don't do that anymore, but it was great to meet everybody. And so I did that also. And then, through your father and some of the other people, I was invited to join the Knights of Columbus right there close to St. Francis, Council 1317, one of the oldest councils in the state. And so I got to learn and meet a lot of people through the KCs and through the church, through St. Francis. I'm originally from Patterson, the same area. I was active in my community over there, and I wanted to do the same thing here. So when I moved to Houma, I made sure that I got active in the community.
And take me back to the earliest years you remember. Were you born in Patterson?
No, sir. I was born in Marrero.
Okay.
My father lived in New Orleans, and my mother, he went through dental school at Loyola, and then when he graduated, he moved to Patterson. But he was originally from Morgan City, so he grew up in Morgan City. So I grew up in Patterson. I was born in 1965. My parents moved to Patterson. I grew up in Patterson. I still have family in Patterson. Graduated from Patterson High School in 1983. Went on to Nichols. Graduated from Nichols in 1988. Got active in the community in Thibodaux while I was at Nichols, thinking that I was going to stay in Thibodaux. Then I married my wife, Christy, who is also from Patterson. We went to high school together. When she graduated from Nichols, she ended up getting a job at Terrebonne General. And that's what brought us here to Houma. I have to say that the people in Houma took us in like we lived here forever. And I tell that to everybody. If you moved here and you're brand new, get active in the community, and they're going to take you in like you lived here forever.
Yep.
And we love this community.
When you say Patterson, matter of fact, I was interviewing Kenny Alford the other day, who pitched at Morgan City. And I went blank for a second. I said, "You pitched at Berwick." He looked at me like, if eyes could kill, Berwick. I said, I forgot all the rivalries in that area, but y'all had some great athletes at Patterson. The Eues, for one.
The Eues, you had Ike Eues, you had Mark Hall, who ended up going to the pros. He played for Green Bay. And how can we forget Dalton Hilliard, who played for the Saints for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, that was golly. It was just, I don't know, luck of the draw or just one of those things or whatever. For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality. What was your degree in college?
I graduated in biology with a minor in chemistry.
Okay.
To be honest with you, when I graduated, I did not know what I was going to do. I always said if worst comes to worst, I could go teach if I needed to. But I ended up working for Cairo Produce when I graduated from college, taking care of their microbiology lab over there. They did a lot of work for a lot of companies like McDonald's and Long John Silver's and Copeland's, and they produced all the produce over there, all the cut produce.
Right.
And it was a major operation at one time. Ultimately, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get into environmental work. So I ended up getting a call from Carrie St. Pé, who worked at DEQ for many years and was the director at BEATNAP. Once again, another one of my mentors. And I worked for DEQ for a few years. I left, got out in private industry for a couple of years, and then I started working for Terrebonne Parish government in 1994. And I stayed there for a few years. I left the parish, and then I went on to work for T. Baker Smith for a little while. And then I left there, started my own company, which was Key Environmental Services. And then Hurricane Gustav came along, and Vernon Bourgeois asked me to kind of help him with the operations and response and recovery, and I did that for a little while. And then Michelle Claudet asked me if I would become the director for the parish, and that's when I took on that position in 2009.
And you've been there through 3 administrations now.
That's correct, and time flies pretty quickly. when that happens.
We're not getting any younger from twisting those chickens way back when to make sure they were good.
I know.
But you had a degree in chemistry and science.
That's good.
That's dangerous.
Well, I had biology. I got my bachelor's in biology.
Biology.
Yeah, my minor in chemistry, and I was always liked the sciences. But one of the real reasons I went into the sciences is I wasn't good at math. So I didn't have to take calculus in the sciences back then. Now you do, but I didn't have to back then. So that kind of swayed me to go into the sciences.
You know, as you sit in your position now, and there's so much pressure during a hurricane, and you realize that. I mean, we sit on the desk here, we communicate with you, you're communicating with public officials who are under the gun. Don't you have to sort of referee through things? I'm not demeaning anybody, but every parish president, every council person, every state rep, I remember the governor came down there for press conferences. What's on their mind is the most important thing in the world. So you got to make sure everybody who's got the most important thing on their mind in the world gets taken care of. You got to juggle a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And every, councilman and the parish president and elected officials, what they bring into me is they think is the most priority and that needs to be done. We are very fortunate the way we operate our office that we have what we call emergency support function managers, and they pretty much manage every aspect of the emergency and infrastructure. And if you come to me as an elected official and you have a concern, that concern is brought to that ESF manager, and he's told, look, this is from Councilman so-and-so, or this is from Representative so-and-so. See where you can work it into your priorities. Because, you go to the utility department, that the guy working that particular support function for the utilities, he knows what it takes to operate his department. So, and he knows where he can kind of put things in. It may not be done right away, what they need to be done, but it will be put into the list and into the priority list. And certain things need to be done before certain other things can take place. So I think it's worked out great. And the thing is communication. If you're coming to me with an event or an issue, I'm going to make sure it's getting taken care of, but I'm going to follow up with you also and say, we're working on this, it's in the list, we hope to get to it on certain time or day, and maybe a couple of days or whatever. If anything changes, I'm going to let you know. But that's the most important thing. I tell everybody the most important thing that happens in our office is to be able to communicate. And so we've spent a lot of money on communications within our office, whether it be audio, visual, or telephones, or satellite services. We have to communicate. And that's not only, on an electronic basis, but on a face-to-face basis also.
I always say the second most important thing besides communicating is listening. Because if somebody's communicating and the other one ain't listening,
it's not going to get
problematic.
Done.
Yeah, the bridge collapses. And that's why it's so important in natural disasters. I mean, you've covered tornadoes, you've covered oil spills.
Pandemics.
Yeah, pandemics. And your resume is pretty thick at this point. But how did that differ? You bring up a good point. Going from a pandemic to Hurricane Ida. They couldn't be farther apart, but they both still make panic in people in a lot of the same respects. Huh?
Yeah, and the deal was those are two very different events. But the most important thing was how we're going to keep people separated and prevent people from getting affected during Hurricane Ida. So one of the biggest issues was what happens if we get somebody with COVID inside of our operations? Okay, now everybody has to be tested. Those that have tested positive, we have to find a place for them to operate.
Yeah.
I still need them to work.
A quarantined area.
But they would have to go to a quarantined area, so we were prepared to do that. The other thing was keeping the residents separated during the event, and that's where we came up with the state's help with the non-congregate sheltering program, which was the travel trailers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people may have been put in large shelters and large base camps for a little while.
If somebody in the Civic Center spreads it all the way across the Civic Center, you got another major problem.
That's correct. That's correct. So the state was very helpful in making sure that we limited the spread of COVID at the time. And I guess if I had to say, luckily, COVID was kind of going on a downtrend at that time when Ida came. So I was very concerned of what would happen if I would lose the majority of my staff inside of the Emergency Operations Center.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. When you were a kid, what shaped you into this direction? Were you always, were you one of those kids that sat behind a shed and took some gunpowder from an M80 and mixed it with something else to see how it would explode? Chemistry is a funny little animal sometimes.
Yeah, I didn't do too much of that. Like I said, I had a lot of mentors in my life. My dad was a big mentor for me. He was a dentist. He was, that's a science field.
And he had to mix compounds.
And I love going through encyclopedias and just kind of browsing.
Say that again? You might be the first person that...
For those that don't know what that was, I guess, I mean, how did you inscribe an encyclopedia nowadays? It's a broad, lots of different subjects in there that you can go through and look up and find out information. It's kind of like Wikipedia is to the generation today.
Which ones did y'all have growing up? Do you remember?
We had World Book.
World Book?
We had World Book. And what fascinated me the most was when you went to the human body, they used to have these plastic pages that kind of overlapped with each other, kind of showed the bones and the organs and all. So, and I was really interested in the space program at that time, because when I was growing up, we were going to the moon.
Yeah.
So I was kind of interested in that. So I always kind of had was interested in the sciences.
So that captivated you.
It did. And so right out of school, I never changed my major. It was always biology. And
so you knew.
I stuck with it.
Was that always your personality, that once you landed on something, you pretty much stay with that?
Pretty much. I've been in a lot of youth organizations when I was growing up also, and I always kind of took a leadership role in those organizations. I was fortunate to be the state chief squire for the Columbian Squires, which was the youth organization of Knights of Columbus. Traveled all over the state, met a lot of great people doing that. And a lot of people I met in Houma, when I came to Houma, was associated with that before. So, I was kind of interested in those leadership roles at the time. So, but I'll tell you what I really made up my mind, Martin, was I thought about going to med school. First, you got to make the grades to get to med school, and I really didn't have those grades. And then I worked my whole way through college. I worked at Campus Police as a dispatcher, and Boot Blakeman and Dale Guillot were there at the time. You might have known those guys.
I know Dale Guillot because he's married to my first cousin.
Okay, so Dale was the chief at the time, and Blake was the assistant chief, and so had a great working relationship with them. And then I went to work for Thibodeau Regional in the emergency room. So after I was in school for about 3 years at college, I was like, I really don't know if I want to finish college. I need to find a skill. I didn't have a skill. So I went to Votech and became an EMT. And worked with a lot of people that are with Acadian now, and most of them are retired now. So I was able to get a job at the emergency room as an orderly at Thibodeau Regional. And so sitting around in the emergency room and talking to these doctors all the time, and I'd be like, "Hey doc, you going to the LSU game this weekend?" It's like, "No, I'm on call." I'm like, "Well, you was on call last week." And so I kind of learned that a doctor's life is very busy, and they have to sacrifice a lot, to be a doctor and to be on call all the time. I decided I didn't want to do that.
Well, at least you didn't say, Doc, I've been watching you all these months. I could do surgery and you could go to the game. And that's a big no, right?
Yeah.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.